Before getting into this video, you need to be comfortable answering questions like these using decimal multipliers. In the first one, for example, we would turn the 73% into a decimal. That would be 0.73. And to find 73% of 950, we would do 0.73 times 950. That's 0.73 lots of 950. And that gives us an answer of 693.5. In the second example, what you would need to do is turn the 135% into a decimal. That would be 1.35, and we would multiply that by 80. That gives us an answer of 108. If you need a bit more practice on these, go back to part 1 of this lesson and the video for that. In this lesson, we're looking at decreasing or increasing a number by a given percentage. In this example, we want to reduce £700 by 20%. So notice we're not trying to find 20% of £700. We want to reduce £700 by 20%. Now, previously, you might have done this by first finding 20% of £700, but then you'd have to subtract that away from 700 to get your answer. What we're going to do here is use decimal multipliers, so it's a different method from what you might have used in the past. So I could look at this question in this way. I've got £700 which I'm representing with this bar, and what I want to do is reduce it by 20%. So I want to get rid of 20%. Now, if I get rid of that 20%, what am I left with? Well, that's simply going to be 80%. We've got the original 100%, and if we do 100% subtract 20%, we're left with 80%. So in this particular question, to reduce £700 by 20%, it's actually exactly the same as being asked to find 80% of £700. These two questions are asking for the same thing. And what we've done here is turn that question into the type of question we did in part 1 of the lesson. To find 80% of £700, we simply need to do 0.8 or 0.80 times 700, and that gives us an answer of 560. And remember, because we were dealing with money, our answer is in pounds. So to recap, what we did was we turned this reduce by a percentage question into a find a percentage question. If we're reducing by 20%, what we actually want to find is the value of the remaining 80%. And then you only have one calculation to really do on your calculator. Here's the second example. It's fairly similar to the first. Instead of the word reduce, however, we're using the word decrease. Decrease means the same as reduce. So we want to decrease 17 miles by 87%. Pause the video and have a go at this one using a decimal multiplier. Here's the answer. If we want to decrease this quantity by 87%, we're getting rid of 87% of it and we're just left with 13%. That's 100% subtract 87%, which is 13%. So this question is actually the same as being asked to find 13% of 17 miles. And that's like a question from part 1 of the lesson now. 13% is 0.13 as a decimal. 0.13 lots of 17. That gives us an answer of 2.21, and the units we were working with were miles, so that's 2.21 miles. Here's the third example. Pause the video and have a go at this one for yourself. Here's the answer. If we're decreasing by 12.5%, that means out of the original 100%, we're getting rid of 12.5%. So what's left is simply going to be 100 take away 12.5, and that gives us an answer of 87.5. So what we're looking for is 87.5% of 72. So we've turned that question into a find a percentage of question, and to find 87.5% of 72, what we need to do is use the decimal form. That's 0.875 times 72. And that gives me an answer of 63. In this example, we're going to increase 90 centimetres by 10%. So we're going to end up with an answer that is bigger than 90 centimetres. What I've done here is represent the 90 centimetres by a bar. And what's effectively happening is that we need to work out what 10% of 90 is and add that on. But another way of thinking about that is to spot that we've got the original 90 centimetres, which is simply 100% of 90, and we're adding on the extra 10% of 90. So altogether what we want is 110%. So 100 plus this extra 10%. So we could turn that question into this question. Find 110% of 90 centimetres. And just like we've done in the previous examples, we've now turned this into something that we knew how to do in part 1. 110% as a decimal is 1.1 or 1.10 if you prefer. We're going to multiply that by 90, and that gives us an answer of 99, and we're dealing with centimetres, so that's 99 centimetres. Just check that it makes sense. That answer there had to be greater than 90, and it is. We have increased it by 10%. And you could quickly work out for yourself, 10% of 90 is 9 centimetres, and if you add that on to 90, you're going to get to 99. So it fits in with what you should already know. The key step here then to realise is that if you are increasing a quantity by a percentage, what you need to do is add that percentage on to 100%, and that's the percent you're trying to find. So in this case, we've turned increase by 10% into find 110%. In this example, we want to increase £2,000 by 7%. Now, we've got the original £2,000, that's worth 100%. Or in other words, that is 100% of £2,000. And what we need to add on to that is 7% of £2,000. So we'd have an extra bit added on like that. So altogether what we're looking for is 107%. And to do this, we would do 1.07 times 2,000, and that would give us an answer of £2,140. In this next example, we are increasing £2,000 by 100%. Now, in the previous example, we increased £2,000 by 7%, which meant we needed to add on an extra 7% into our bar diagram. This time, what we're going to add on is an extra 100% of £2,000. And hopefully you can see that that's simply going to be another £2,000. So altogether, we're going to end up with a total of £4,000. Increasing something by 100% is the same as doubling it. You're adding on an extra 100% to its original amount, which was 100%. Looking at this in the way we did the earlier questions, what we're actually looking for then is 200% of £2,000, and as a decimal we could write 200 as 2, or 2.0, 2.00 if you prefer. 2 times 2,000 is 4,000, and we're dealing with pounds in this case, so the answer is £4,000. We're now going to change this example slightly, so we're going to increase £2,000 by 107%. So this time we're going to take our original £2,000 and we're going to add on 107% of it on top. So we've got that extra £2,000 and another 7% of £2,000 added on to that. But using the method that we've been using so far, we can see that increasing by 107% is the same as finding 207%. We've got the original 100% plus 107% added on. So what we're looking for is 207% of £2,000. What we do now is use the decimal multiplier for this. 207% is 2.07, and we multiply that by the 2,000, and that gives us an answer of £4,140. Here's the final example. Pause the video and have a go at this one for yourself. Here's the answer. What we're doing is actually looking for 407% of £2,000. That's because you're increasing the original £2,000 by an extra 307%. So you've got the original 100% and you're adding on 307% of that on top. So we're looking for 407% of £2,000. Then to do this, we write 4.07 times 2,000, and that gives us an answer of £8,140.